We live in a world that's pulling us in 100 directions at once. Notifications, distractions, obligations, and in the middle of that chaos, your dream, the thing you were designed to build, live, and become, waits in silence. Not because it lacks power, but because you keep leaking yours. Energy isn't just a feeling. It's biology, it's chemistry, it's electricity. And you only get so much of it in a day. So let me ask you this. Where is your energy going? The human brain has limited glucose and oxygen to use per waking hour. Every thought, every decision, every unnecessary worry or meaningless scroll consumes part of that finite resource. If you're burning cognitive fuel on things that don't serve your goal, then you're starving the very circuits that are meant to help you achieve it. You weren't built to chase everything. You were built to chase the right thing, your thing. But chasing it requires deliberate action. And that begins with protecting your focus, which is one of the most powerful levers for change your brain has access to. See, attention is like a spotlight. Where it shines, energy flows. And where energy flows, neurons fire. Over time, those neurons wire together. That means what you repeat mentally becomes your identity physically. The more you waste attention on negativity, comparison, or aimless distraction, the more you're training your brain not to care about your dream. This isn't motivational fluff. It's neural programming. You are either wiring your brain for progress or procrastination, and every moment is a vote. Let me give you something practical. First, protect your morning. Cortisol, your alertness hormone, peaks within 30 to 60 minutes after waking. That's your biological prime time. Don't squander it. If you spend those first moments of heightened alertness checking emails or doom scrolling, you're training your brain to react, not create. Instead, wake up, get light in your eyes, natural sunlight if possible, move your body, and immediately do something that aligns with your dream. Even 10 minutes of focused effort will reshape your neural identity over time. Second, embrace deep work. Your brain operates in cycles of high and low attention. 90 minutes of focused effort, uninterrupted by notifications or multitasking, is enough to move the needle forward in extraordinary ways. But you must protect that block like it's sacred, because it is. If you give that 90-minute block away to distraction, you've already given away the day's best cognitive window. Third, eliminate mental leaks. These are thoughts and actions that waste energy. Worrying about what other people think, replaying conversations in your mind, checking your phone for no reason, saying yes to things that pull you off your path. Every time you engage in those behaviors, you're burning cognitive resources that were meant for building your dream. Protect your internal state like it's your last battery, because, on a neurological level, it is. Next, learn to use your physiology to control your psychology. Want to instantly lower your stress and regain clarity? Exhale longer than you inhale. This activates your parasympathetic nervous system, the system responsible for calm and restoration. It shifts you out of fight or flight and into rest and digest. That's where your best ideas live. That's where long-term vision takes shape. Too often, we think we need motivation to act. That's backwards. Action creates the neurochemical environment that produces motivation. When you act, especially when it's hard, dopamine is released not just as a reward, but as a teaching signal. Your brain is saying, yes, more of this. So, if you want to be motivated, stop waiting, start doing, start now. The chemistry will follow. And let's talk about dopamine for a moment. Dopamine isn't about pleasure, it's about pursuit. It peaks not when you get the reward, but when you're moving toward it. If you attach your dopamine to progress, not perfection, then you unlock endless energy. But if you burn it all on short-term hits, social media, fast food, shallow praise, you're running your reward circuitry into the ground. You're teaching your brain that crumbs of instant gratification are worth more than the feast of purpose. That's the real energy drain, chasing cheap dopamine instead of deep fulfillment. Now, some of you think the issue is laziness, but that's not the problem. The problem is friction. There's too much resistance between you and what matters. So reduce it. Set up your environment to cue the behavior you want. Put your phone in another room. Lay out your workout clothes the night before. Automate success. The less energy you need to start, the more likely you are to continue. And as you begin to reallocate your attention and your energy, you'll notice something. Your dream stops being abstract. It begins to feel inevitable. Because your brain is not a mystery. It's a machine. And like any machine, what you program is what it produces. But the most beautiful part of this machine, it changes with use. You are not stuck. You are not broken. You are underutilized. You were given this mind to shape your reality, not to drift through it. So today, reclaim your attention, conserve your energy, redirect your focus, and move with intention toward the vision that calls you. Stop wasting energy, start building momentum. Your dream isn't out of reach, your distractions are just in the way. Shift your biology, reset your priorities. Then use this brain, this body, this life to go create what you were made for. It's not just possible, it's neurochemically inevitable if you choose to focus. Every day, you wake up with a limited supply of energy, not just the feeling of energy, but actual biological fuel, glucose, oxygen, neurotransmitters, and hormonal rhythms that your brain and body depend on to function, focus, and take action. This is not motivational metaphor, it's measurable fact. Your prefrontal cortex, the area responsible for decision-making, willpower, long-term planning, draws significantly from your body's energy reserves. And once those resources begin to deplete, your capacity to focus, resist distraction, and persist toward meaningful goals starts to unravel. Yet, in our modern world, most people burn through their energy before they even begin working on what matters. They waste their best biological fuel reacting to emails, scrolling through feeds, entertaining social comparison, and ruminating on problems they can't control. Every notification you respond to, every irrelevant task you say yes to, every argument you replay in your mind costs you something. It drains the very energy your brain needs to show up fully in the direction of your dreams. People often feel unmotivated, not because they lack ambition, but because they've mismanaged the very resources that ambition depends on. Think of your daily energy like money in a bank account. If you spend it all on things that don't produce a return, you end the day broke, mentally and physically. The tragedy is that most of this spending is unconscious. You didn't decide to give your energy away to meaningless scrolling or emotional reactivity. It just happened because you weren't guarding it with intention. This is where awareness becomes power. When you realize that every action has a metabolic cost, you begin to treat your time, attention, and choices with more respect. Let's take decision fatigue, for example. The more decisions you make, even small ones, the more fatigued your brain becomes. That's why high performers like athletes, leaders, and creatives often simplify their morning routines. They reduce choice in the early hours to preserve mental energy for what truly matters later in the day. This is not about being robotic, it's about being strategic. You only have so many high-quality cognitive outputs in you each day. The question is, where are you spending them? The body follows the brain. When the brain is overworked with scattered attention and unnecessary stress, the body enters a state of low-grade exhaustion. The nervous system tightens, the muscles fatigue faster, and the immune system weakens. But when the brain is protected, when you eliminate distractions, simplify inputs, and focus your energy, everything from mood to metabolism improves. Your entire biology begins to align with your vision. That's not magic. It's conservation and direction of a finite resource. In neuroscience, we understand that energy is not just output, it's control. Your ability to regulate behavior, to stay calm under stress, to resist temptation, to move toward a long-term goal. These are all acts of energy control. If you use up all your resources in the first half of the day chasing things that don't matter, your ability to execute discipline in the second half of the day falls apart. And once that slips, the dream you're chasing becomes something you merely fantasize about instead of build. But here's the good news. Energy can be protected and even expanded if you manage it like an asset. The first step is to identify what's leaking your energy. Is it people who drain you emotionally? Is it tasks that should be delegated? Is it habits that spike your stress hormones unnecessarily? The more clearly you define your energy leaks, the more power you regain to redirect them. Next, you have to anchor your energy to something bigger than comfort. The pursuit of a dream will always require more from you than the pursuit of convenience. So your energy needs a mission. When you're aligned with a purpose, the brain actually becomes more efficient with its energy use. You get into flow states faster. Dopamine is released in anticipation of progress. The body mobilizes toward action. You become more resilient to stress. Why? Because the energy you're spending now serves a future you believe in. That belief itself is energizing. You don't need endless motivation to succeed. You need wise stewardship of your biology. If you learn to manage your limited energy, like a professional athlete manages training cycles, or like a pilot manages fuel in flight, you begin to see that it's not about how much energy you have, but how you use it. The brain will follow patterns. If you train it to waste energy, it will. If you train it to conserve and focus energy, it will do that too. Every time you protect your attention, every time you say no to the unnecessary, every time you guard your mornings and structure your days, you're not just being productive, you're rewiring your nervous system to value your dream more than your distractions. And that shift, biologically, chemically, and psychologically, is what builds a life of unstoppable focus and momentum. Focus is not just a mental act. It is a biological force that shapes the architecture of your brain. The more you direct your attention towards something with intensity and repetition, the more your neurons respond. And the more your neurons respond, the more they fire together. Over time, neurons that fire together wire together. This is the principle of neuroplasticity. It means your brain is constantly reshaping itself in response to what you pay attention to. If your focus is scattered, so is your neurological development. But if your focus is sharp, deliberate, and consistent, you begin to reshape your mind and body toward mastery. Your brain is not static. It's not fixed. It is a system of circuits that adapts to what you repeatedly do. The prefrontal cortex, responsible for executive function, impulse control, and goal direction, strengthens or weakens based on your level of intentionality. The more you bring your focus to a task with purpose, the more your brain tunes itself to become efficient in that domain. If you spend your days focused on deep learning, strategy, or creation, your brain becomes more capable of those things. If you spend your time focusing on fear, drama, or distractions, your brain becomes more sensitive to those inputs as well. Neuroplasticity is how the brain learns, but it is also how the brain becomes what you teach it to become. Every time you focus with high intensity on a skill, a task, or an idea, you are giving your brain a signal that says, "This matters." Reinforce it. That signal activates specific neuromodulators, like acetylcholine and dopamine, which flag those neural circuits for growth. Those chemicals act like spotlight markers in the brain, tagging certain synapses for strengthening and others for pruning. This is how focus literally directs the physical remodeling of the brain's networks. This is why multitasking kills growth. When your focus is split between several things at once, you never trigger the deep concentration required to activate those learning-enhancing neuromodulators. You won't ever become more quick or efficient than the new basis you've worked up, because the brain can only navigate and maintain so much in such short cycles. Instead, your attention hovers at the surface level, never diving deep enough to produce real change. People often wonder why they're not improving or making progress. It's because they're mentally diffused. Focus is the gatekeeper to neuroplasticity. Without it, the brain doesn't register what it should reinforce. If you want to rewire your habits, transform your thinking, or master a new discipline, you have to start by controlling your attention. Not once in a while, but every day. Repetition matters, but not as much as quality. 1 hour of high-focus practice is more neurologically valuable than 10 hours of distracted repetition. Quality repetition, done with presence and effort, tells the brain to build and reinforce those circuits faster and more efficiently. This is especially important when learning something difficult. Challenge amplifies plasticity. When something is hard and you bring focus to it anyway, the brain registers that struggle as a signal to adapt. It's in the effort, the stretch, and the slight discomfort that neuroplasticity is accelerated. But most people avoid this zone. They default to ease, to entertainment, to distraction, and they wonder why nothing changes. Change requires friction. Growth requires challenge. And focus is how you harness both to your advantage. There's another dimension to this as well: emotion. When you attach emotional significance to what you focus on, plasticity intensifies. That's why memories tied to strong emotions are more easily recalled. When you care deeply about something, when you're invested in it, your focus becomes more powerful. The brain locks in those circuits with greater permanence. So don't just go through the motions. Invest meaning into your focus. Remind yourself why it matters. That emotional charge acts like a catalyst in the brain, enhancing retention and speed of adaptation. But this system works both ways. If you consistently focus on what you fear, hate, or wish to avoid, you're also reinforcing those circuits. The brain doesn't judge what's good or bad, it simply strengthens what is repeated with intensity. That's why worry becomes habit. That's why fear grows stronger when you keep replaying negative scenarios. You're practicing the wrong thing. You're focusing your neuroplasticity in the wrong direction. The solution is not to suppress these thoughts, but to redirect your focus with conscious effort. It takes time, it takes repetition, but that's how the brain works. Attention is the steering wheel, neuroplasticity is the engine, and the road is determined by where you consistently look. If you train yourself to bring intense focus to your vision, your purpose, and your future, the brain will follow. It will rewire itself to make that vision more accessible, more natural, more automatic. So the next time you find yourself drifting, remind yourself that every moment of attention is a vote for the brain you're building, a vote for the future you're stepping into. Focus isn't just how you succeed, it's how you become. The way you spend your morning doesn't just influence your day, it programs your nervous system for the hours that follow. Your brain and body are highly sensitive to the first signals they receive upon waking. Those signals, light, movement, temperature, emotion, focus, are inputs that calibrate your internal state and determine the direction of your mental and physiological trajectory. This isn't abstract theory, it's measurable neuroscience. Your morning routines lay the groundwork for how alert, focused, motivated, or stressed you'll be, and the choices you make within the first 30 to 90 minutes of the day hold disproportionate influence over the rest of it. When you wake up, your cortisol levels naturally rise. This spike isn't negative, it's part of your body's biological clock, designed to increase alertness and mobilize energy. But if you pair that cortisol rise with negative inputs, emails, arguments, anxiety-inducing news, or digital overstimulation, you're training your nervous system to enter a reactive state that becomes the dominant neural pattern for the rest of the day. Your body remains locked in a low-level stress response, your ability to focus narrows, and your emotional baseline is tilted toward defensiveness or urgency. On the other hand, if you meet that cortisol spike with intentional behavior, natural light, movement, hydration, calm breathing, and goal-oriented action, you signal to your nervous system that the day is safe, productive, and under your direction. That subtle shift alters everything from hormone release to attention regulation. Your morning becomes the compass by which your entire neural network orients itself, and it does so automatically without your conscious awareness every single day. One of the most powerful ways to influence this trajectory is through light exposure. Your circadian rhythm is regulated by light cues received by specialized cells in the retina. These cells, called melanopsin and teinogen ganglion cells, detect light and communicate directly with the brain's master clock in the suprachiasmatic nucleus. When you step outside and receive natural sunlight in your eyes, especially within the first 30 to 60 minutes of waking, you anchor your biological clock. This not only enhances daytime alertness and mood, but also sets the timer for nighttime melatonin release, improving your sleep. Inconsistent or absent morning light confuses this system and leads to sluggishness, irritability, and disrupted sleep patterns. Movement is another critical input. Physical activity, even something as simple as walking or stretching, sends powerful signals to your brain that the day has begun. It elevates body temperature, increases blood flow, and primes the release of neurotransmitters like dopamine and norepinephrine, which heighten motivation and focus. These chemicals aren't just for performance, they determine how you emotionally experience your day. When you move with intention in the morning, your brain rewards you with the chemistry of confidence and engagement. Equally important is what you feed your attention. Your first focus of the day becomes a neural anchor. If you start your day checking messages, comparing yourself on social media, or spiraling into mental noise, you're locking your attention into fragmented, externally controlled patterns. Those patterns become your brain's default setting. But if you begin with even a short period of stillness, planning, or focused learning, you train your attention to stabilize. That stability becomes the foundation for creative and cognitive depth throughout the day. Hydration plays a surprisingly impactful role as well. During sleep, your body becomes dehydrated, which affects brain volume and cognitive performance. A glass or two of water first thing in the morning helps restore metabolic function, optimize blood flow, and improve energy. Small habits like this don't seem revolutionary, but biologically they shift your baseline. That shift compounds daily, reinforcing a physiology that works for you rather than against you. The way you breathe in the morning also sets a tone for your autonomic nervous system. Fast, shallow breathing activates the sympathetic branch, your fight or flight state. Slow, controlled exhalations engage the parasympathetic branch, your rest and digest mode. A few minutes of intentional breathing upon waking can downregulate overnight stress hormones and create a mental space for clarity and intention. And then there's purpose. What you remind yourself of in the morning, what you focus on, say out loud, or visualize, activates goal networks in the prefrontal cortex. It sets dopamine pathways in motion. It gives your brain something to pursue, something to solve, something to grow into. That's not motivational talk. It's reward prediction circuitry in action. Your brain wants direction. If you don't give it one, it will chase the nearest form of stimulation. But when you assign it a mission, even a small one, you engage the systems of attention, memory, and motor planning that keep you moving in alignment. Morning is not just the start of your day, it's the template. It determines the tone, direction, and rhythm of your internal state. If you spend those first moments with intention, aligned to your goals and your biology, the rest of your day becomes an extension of that clarity. But if you give them away to randomness, you build a mind and body that drift. And over time, that drift becomes your identity. The human brain is designed to focus, to engage deeply, and to build mastery through sustained attention. When you immerse yourself in deep, uninterrupted work, you're not just completing a task, you're rewiring your brain. You are teaching your neural circuits to become more efficient, more connected, and more capable of handling complex cognitive demands. Deep work is not merely a productivity strategy, it is a biological necessity for growth. The brain adapts to what it consistently does, and deep focus is one of the most powerful levers to trigger meaningful neuroplastic change. In a state of deep work, your prefrontal cortex becomes dominant. This is the region responsible for planning, reasoning, and resisting impulsive distractions. It's the seat of conscious control. When you enter that zone of full concentration, irrelevant noise from your internal and external environment is suppressed. Your brain shifts from shallow reactive patterns into a state of deliberate cognitive effort. And with repetition, it learns to access this mode faster and with greater stability. Over time, this develops your ability to stay engaged with hard problems, to think critically, and to create work that carries weight. This ability is becoming increasingly rare. Most people live in a mental environment that favors constant interruption, notifications, endless scrolling, multitasking. These behaviors fragment attention and erode the brain's capacity for deep focus. When you allow your brain to be pulled in 10 directions at once, you weaken the very circuits responsible for long-form thinking. You train yourself to become a passive consumer of noise rather than an active creator of meaning. Deep work reverses this trend. It strengthens your cognitive endurance. It teaches your mind to resist distraction and stay anchored in one domain for long periods. The neuromodulator acetylcholine plays a central role in this process. When you engage in focused work, your brain releases acetylcholine into specific areas of the cortex, amplifying the signal-to-noise ratio. This chemical sharpens your attention and flags relevant synapses for strengthening. In other words, deep work doesn't just make you feel productive, it increases the likelihood that the brain will physically change as a result of what you're doing. It marks that work as valuable, worthy of neural investment. This is how learning becomes lasting. This is how skill becomes automatic. But deep work requires effort. and the brain doesn't initially enjoy effort. At first, sitting in silence, pushing through difficulty, and resisting the urge to switch tasks feels uncomfortable. This discomfort is not a flaw. It's a signal that you're entering a zone of growth. Neural friction means that your brain is reaching into territories that haven't been automated yet. It's struggling to stabilize patterns, to form new connections, to hold multiple ideas in working memory. That's the moment when most people quit. But if you stay in it, if you breathe through the resistance and continue engaging, you activate the machinery of transformation. Your brain rewards persistence with adaptation. Flow state is the byproduct of deep work, but it cannot be forced. It arises when challenge meets skill, when your cognitive capacity is stretched but not broken. In flow, time dilates, the inner critic silences, you become fully immersed in the task at hand. And from a neurochemical perspective, your brain becomes flooded with dopamine, norepinephrine, and endorphins. These chemicals not only enhance your performance in the moment, they create a reinforcing loop that makes deep work more accessible in the future. You begin to crave that level of engagement. It becomes your new baseline. Setting up your environment for deep work is critical. Your brain is constantly scanning for cues. If your surroundings are chaotic, filled with reminders of other tasks or temptations, your cognitive energy is constantly being siphoned. The key is to design a space that cues focus and minimizes input. Silence your notifications, clear your desk, block distracting websites. When you eliminate cognitive noise, you free up bandwidth for depth, and that depth compounds. Each session of focused effort strengthens the muscle of concentration. Each time you return to deep work, it becomes easier to re-enter that state. This is cognitive training. This is how you expand your potential. The benefits of deep work extend beyond productivity. It improves memory retention, problem-solving ability, and emotional regulation. When you learn to sit with one task, your nervous system becomes more resilient. You're less reactive, more composed, and better able to engage with complexity. You gain the power to create rather than consume, to lead rather than follow. Deep work builds not only cognitive power, but personal identity. It teaches you who you are when all distractions are stripped away. In a world that rewards speed, noise, and multitasking, choosing deep work is a rebellion. It's a return to what your brain was made to do: focus, build, and evolve. And the more you practice it, the more it becomes your superpower. Not because you're doing more, but because you're becoming more. More capable, more focused, more complete. Dopamine is one of the most misunderstood molecules in the brain. People often think it's the chemical of pleasure, the reward you get after achieving something or consuming something enjoyable. But that's not its primary function. Dopamine is not about the reward itself. It's about the pursuit of the reward. It's the neurochemical that drives motivation, effort, and forward movement. It tells your brain that thing out there is worth going after, and it provides the energy to chase it. This is why understanding dopamine isn't just a matter of biology. It's a blueprint for how to structure your life if you want sustained motivation, growth, and discipline. When dopamine is properly aligned with progress, not just pleasure, it becomes one of the most powerful tools for personal transformation. The human brain is wired to seek novelty and advancement. Each time you take a meaningful step toward a goal, especially one that requires effort, dopamine is released. And when that dopamine is linked to the process, not just the outcome, you create a self-reinforcing loop that makes it easier to keep showing up. This loop is what separates those who stay consistent from those who burn out or give up. The danger in modern life is that dopamine is often hijacked. Social media, fast food, online shopping, video games, these are engineered to give you rapid, effortless spikes of dopamine with little to no effort. But these spikes come at a cost. When the brain becomes accustomed to receiving rewards without challenge, it becomes less responsive to the slower, deeper satisfaction of real progress. Over time, this leads to desensitization. Used to feel exciting or motivating no longer has the same effect, and the brain begins to crave stronger and more frequent hits of stimulation just to feel normal. This is not motivation, it's dependency. This is why it's crucial to retrain your dopamine system. The first step is to stop chasing dopamine through pleasure and start earning it through effort. That means recognizing that the most meaningful forms of dopamine release are tied to challenge, discipline, and growth. When you wake up early to train, when you resist the urge to procrastinate, when you read instead of scroll, when you push through mental fatigue, your brain responds. It begins to associate progress with satisfaction, not the type of satisfaction that fades in minutes, but the kind that builds a foundation of self-respect and long-term momentum. Neurologically, this happens because the brain is highly plastic. It rewires itself in response to what you repeatedly do. If you consistently reward yourself for completing a task, for showing up, for doing the hard thing, you create a pattern where dopamine is linked to behavior that aligns with your values. This is powerful because it changes your identity. You stop seeing yourself as someone who needs motivation, and you start seeing yourself as someone who creates it through action. The timing of dopamine also matters. If you only allow yourself to feel good once the goal is achieved, you're limiting its effectiveness. The brain thrives when dopamine is released during the process. When you celebrate the effort, when you acknowledge the micro wins, when you attach meaning to the climb rather than the summit, you fuel the system continuously. This keeps you engaged even when the outcome is far away. It keeps you focused when there's no external reward in sight. This doesn't mean you should never enjoy pleasure. It means you should place pleasure in its proper context. Pleasure should be a byproduct of progress, not a substitute for it. When you earn your dopamine through discipline, it strengthens your nervous system. You become more resilient, more focused, and more capable of enduring the discomfort that comes with meaningful work. The most successful people, whether they're athletes, entrepreneurs, or artists, understand this intuitively. They know that chasing short-term pleasure weakens long-term performance. They've trained themselves to crave the grind, not just the glory. They find fulfillment in the act of getting better, not just in the praise they receive for having arrived. This mindset isn't natural, it's developed. It's built through thousands of tiny decisions to tie dopamine to the work, not the reward. Every time you resist the easy hit and choose the hard path, you send a message to your brain. You tell it that real satisfaction lives on the other side of effort, and your brain listens. It adapts. It recalibrates. Eventually, the very things you once avoided become the things you seek out, not because they're easy, but because they're aligned with the person you're becoming. This is the ultimate power of dopamine. When you understand it and when you use it wisely, you don't need to wait for motivation to strike. You generate it, you build it, you live it, not in reaction to pleasure, but in pursuit of purpose.